For those, I just wanted to first introduce myself. So my name is Deepa, very long surname, Raju. I'm one of the medical consultants working in Southampton General Hospital. So my day job is I'm an acute and a general physician. And I've always had an interest in space. And one of my colleagues who's previously worked with the Austrian Space Forum mentioned about this mission, which I will talk about, the AMADI-20 mission, and asked if I wanted to get involved as a meadow on the mission, which I was very privileged and enjoyed the mission very much. And I'll talk briefly about that. And I got to meet this amazing, the team who were all very, have this amazing vision for what we can achieve by doing analog missions and contributing to that, to the missions to Mars in the future. And I'm very proud and privileged to be part of that member. And so I just want to talk about the AMADI-20 mission, but also the mission that Austrian Space Forum does in general. I wish I could join you guys in person for that. Unfortunately, the science workshop was also at the same time, so I'm not able to do that. But hopefully through this presentation, I can give you a brief overview of what we do and briefly a bit about the mission and amazing things we've achieved from that as well. So let me just start with just what the Austrian Space Forum does in terms of how they simulate a space analog mission. And I'll just start with some of the missions that we've done since 2006. So obviously you can see here there's a wide variety of sort of terrestrial land-based missions, including sort of extreme sort of heat environments to cold environments. And the latest one was in 2020 in Negev Desert in Israel, which was simulating obviously the extreme heat environment. So briefly, just to go through a bit of the structure of how we do this. So we obviously have a field crew, which is in simulating Mars. And in this particular mission, we were in Israel in the Negev Desert in the Mitzvah Ramon crater. And we had about, I think ended up being more than 15 field crew. And we had 2 meadows in this mission, which we were lucky to have, and lots of on-site support team. And we were isolated, so we were out there for about 4 weeks doing lots of experiments. And then we also had the Earth side of the team up back in Innsbruck, and they also were made up of BME team, the medical team, and lots of other support team, including the guys that were doing their experiments as well. So my role in this mission as a medical officer was basically to ensure not only the astronauts' health, but also the crew's health as well when I was out there on the field. And for the astronauts particularly, I mean, the Austrian Space Forum has this amazing, they are the suits, the 2 suits that the astronauts, when they do EVAs, they wear and they go out. My job was to do pre-assessments before they went out on those EVAs, and then to do assessment during the EVA and after as well. And during the mission, during the EVAs, we would use the telemetry that I would monitor ECGs and other observations to make sure that they didn't get heat stress. But also crew health as well. Everyone out on the field, it was our job to make sure any injuries, there were some small injuries that we had during the mission, to make sure that was attended to and sort of preventing and troubleshooting any major incidents from happening. And then we also had discussions with the Earth crew back in Innsbruck about any things we needed to change as the mission progressed as well. And this is the Earth crew, which is back in Innsbruck. They remotely also monitored telemetry during EVAs. They also provided support if you didn't, if you needed any additional medical sort of equipments, who to contact. If there was anything they saw that could be done better, that we would communicate and troubleshoot ideas for further EVAs. And then also major incident planning, just in case something untoward were to happen, who to contact and numbers, etc. So I'm not sure this projects very well, but what are the sort of the predictive medical risks we had during this mission? So this slide just briefly sort of highlights, so on Mars, obviously you have risks from radiation, low Earth, so gravity environments, just being isolated, being so far away from Earth, and any chance of repatriation, etc., would be difficult. So those are the actual risks if you were out on Mars. And then obviously during this mission we had obviously the spacesuit. There's risks with wearing a spacesuit out in that heat at that temperature, and I'll talk about briefly some of those. And it's making sure people the astronauts are safe when they go out in these suits. the environment itself. So not only the heat, but the terrain itself. Some of these had steep climbs and big rocks and things. And they were also using quad bikes to get from places and making sure they didn't get any injuries during those trips. And we did try and maintain a time delay. So we had a 10-minute time delay as to simulate real life, Mars, the astronauts were out in Mars. So we maintained a 10-minute delay for any communication. So that was simulated with this mission as well. And obviously isolation, we were out there for 4 weeks as well. And the astronauts were isolated in habitats, they didn't get contact. They were out of touch with everybody. So there's obviously psychological factors and practical issues with that as well. And as you all know, COVID also happened, hence the mission got delayed to 2021 rather than 2020, which was originally supposed to happen. So there's COVID risks to take into account in mission planning this time as well. In this case, we made sure there was, before we even went out there, everybody was vaccinated, and making sure that we had the right guidance in terms of self-isolation periods, etc., when entering Israel. So we had to sort all of that out as well. And during the mission, we had regular lateral flow checks for everybody in the crew, as well as the astronauts before they went to isolation, to make sure that to minimize the COVID risk. And any visitors, we had lots of visitors during this mission, from media crew to other people attending the habitat. We wanted to make sure that they didn't increase our risk, COVID risk, during those visits. So we had to put some measures into place to prevent that as well. In terms of safety during the mission itself, when the AAs went out on mission, we had a safety with them at all times. They were not necessarily medically trained, but they had basic skill set to be able to take the helmet off if the astronauts got into a heat stress situation, etc. So they followed the astronauts around just in case there was an incident. And then the MEDA was back in a console in a separate area, monitoring the telemetry remotely. And then obviously, if there's anything that we identified as a risk, then we would stop EVAs or get them back into the habitat. And we could get in contact with the BME team back in Innsbruck if we had any issues with the medical telemetry or monitoring. And then we had ways of via electronic chat system to communicate to the AAs about any issues we had. So a bit about the mission itself. So it happened in October for roughly, it was 4 weeks at Negev Desert in Mitzpe Ramon, which is a beautiful place in Israel, actually, where I've never been there. It pretty much, to me, it just looks like Mars, which is amazing. We had lots of experiments. We had about 24 experiments covering all sorts of areas. We had geology studies, robotics, human factors. We had a huge number of experiments. We had lots of volunteers and researchers, and over 25 nations were involved in the collective mission itself, which was amazing. Just a bit about the place. So one of this is Mars and one of this is Mitzpe Ramon, and I'm not sure you can really appreciate which it looks so similar to me. The left it's Israel, and the right it's where we were. So the other picture I'll show you as well, which will highlight a similar thing. So I'm not sure, again, one of this is Mars pictures and the other one is where we were. And to me, they look almost identical. The top one is actually Israel, and this is Mars. So I think we picked a location very, very, very almost identical, apart from the radiation and other risks, very similar, and a good place to simulate an analog mission. These were all the people that were involved behind the scenes before we even got to the mission. So this is one of the astronauts putting on the exoskeleton part before they put on the suit. So you can see all these exoskeleton being put on. This is the actual suit itself. And there's lots of sort of back and forth experiments of which works and what not to do with the suit. So there was lots of trial and errors during the pre-planning stage, which started in 2017 actually. So it was a very long pre-planning stage. And this is what the suit looks like, and it's tested to very extreme heat to very extreme cold as well, which in previous missions, which is interesting. And then there was lots of training that happened for the AAs themselves, the analog astronauts, and also we had many dress rehearsals. Unfortunately, most of them virtually during 2020 and 2021 due to COVID. But we did lots of planning, just we went through the experiments and the equipments and making sure everything was safe before we got there. And the AAs also had some training in medical, sort of basic medical emergencies if we unfortunately ever to get into it. And lots of sort of training around. So this is Wi-Fi setup. We all got to be involved in part of setting this up, which is very important, obviously, for communications. And we all got training, a limited training in that to do that as well. And this is the suit itself. So this is the OeWF suit, and this OeWF is the other one. And this is someone just donning the suit on one of the astronauts. These are the quad bikes. This is a slightly different one, but we use this to get around certain terrains, and the AAs also use this during their EVAs as well. And it's quite a challenge when they have the suits on going in these quads. And these are the two suits together. So these are suit techs and different members that are specifically trained to don the suits and then doff the suits, which is very important because it needs to be done in a particular order. And there was lots of training that went pre-mission to do this as well. So we had 5 astronauts. I think it ended up being 6 in the end because one of them joined a bit later, and these are all of them, and they're very so as you can see, they're from different countries. So there's very multicultural and multi-national input into this mission, which is very nice. And there was lots of pre-planning. There was lots of meetings with the Israeli team and the Austrian team, and lots of meetings with different payload people and experiments that they wanted to get involved. So this was like a 3 years of planning, building the habitat, speaking to different team members to get to this place. And these are all the different dress rehearsals we did, practicing various bits of. So this is one of the drones, for example, that the AAs learned to operate. This is one of the this is one of the AAs virtually operating a robot, which they did during the mission as well. So there was obviously the habitat where we were in this says Oman, but we also did this similar structure to when it was in Oman. In Israel, we did the same thing. We had experiments in the habitat, 10-minute delay communication to the Innsbruck team, who were the mission support team. And we communicated all of the experiment results to them for data collection, etc. And this was the mission support center in Innsbruck. Nice view of some mountains there. And this was there's at least 30 to 40 people involved in that team, and they did an amazing job making sure all the flight planning and all of the data collection, everything was done in a timely manner, and did an amazing job supporting us in the field when we were out there. This is all of them here, so you can see it's a huge crew that goes behind the scenes in doing that, and they spend many sleepless hours with us trying to troubleshoot problems when we came up with it. This was the actual habitat itself in the desert. So this was the habitat that the astronauts stayed in. These were the solar panels that sort of used as generator for electricity, and these 2 containers had all the equipment we needed stored in there. So the AAs mainly were here. These are the 2 quads. I don't know if you can see, you can appreciate. So yeah, it was a pretty cool and amazing place to be, I have to say. So this is the habitat itself so this habitat, so they had the airlock where we would leave things if we need to. This is sort of the lab / experiment area, and also the place where the suits were donned before they got into the airlock and went outside. This is more the living quarters for the astronauts, so the kitchen, the bed space, and the toilet and the shower at the back end. This is a habitat itself when you sort of took a picture this way, and it's I always thought it's a very cool. I never get used to looking at this image. I think it always looks amazing how they managed to build this whole structure in here. Yeah, it's a very nice inside as well. And these were 2 members of the OSS that were in charge of setting up the habitat and make sure it was operational, etc. This is the suit itself. Someone's in the process of donning. These are the 2 AAs who were helping with the donning, and these were the other 2 female AAs that went out during EVAs. So there was lots of challenges during this mission as well, because of the time delay communication. That created some challenges when we had wanted some answers about some experiments not working, etc. from the the team. So sometimes the time delay did cause a bit of an issue, but I suppose that simulates real life scenario. We also had flight planning every day. This is an example of what a flight plan looks like, and that changed quite a lot, I have to say, because of we had some sicknesses during the mission, but also due to some equipment not working, we had to alter this. So there was quite a challenge in trying to get this quite tight and then sticking to the time schedule. There's also some malfunctions, particularly one of the suits. There was issues with telemetry in one of the suits, which caused issue with me as a medic monitoring the safety during EVAs, and we had to work around that, and we had lots of troubleshooting options we did to try and resolve that situation. Isolation protocols was an issue sometimes in the desert, and then some of the data, because it was quite a large data collection, we had issues about how we would store it and then transfer it to the Innsbruck team. So there was some challenges, but it was nevertheless very enjoyable, I have to say, from my end, trying to even solve these situations as we went along. And sort of going forward from here, I think there's lots of opportunities from this mission to go forward with the scientific experiments. There was about 24 experiments, as I said. There's lots of opportunities to develop that further and change, because we had a lot of learning points from what could be done better. And I think there was lots of opportunities in the next mission going forward to adapt and maybe change some of these. We developed a very good relationship with the Israeli team. And in fact, one of the members from that team is now our OSS lead, helping us make a permanent OSS team to develop this mission a bit more strategically and troubleshoot a bit better before the mission actually happens. We have very good collaboration with the Israeli team now, which we're very proud of. And also educational opportunities for taking this mission and the learning to other avenues like STEM education, etc. So lots of good things has come out of this mission. This is just a picture of one of the experiments we did. I thought it's pretty cool to show. So this is the movement sensors that was inside the habitat to see where astronauts spend most of their times and how they moved around the habitat. And there's more detailed sort of paper being released about this, but I just thought this was a cool picture of you can see the habitat and where the astronauts spend. This was just one of the experiments. This is the other experiment, which was Aeroscan, one of the drones, which was quite cool because it had a vertical lift off, and then you could sort of do an assessment of the entire region and take some pictures and things, which is really cool. This is the other experiment which the AAs quite enjoyed working on. This is one of the pictures actually that's taken by Aeroscan, and you can see the habitat with the two containers here. So this kind of mapping that that drone did. This is one of the other MacArthur robot, which was also used to map terrain out. So we did lots of sort of just mapping terrain using this robot, which is just a video of, you can see it's pretty cool. It actually looks like a robot on Mars, which I hope we thought was a cool video. And then this was another experiment, which is tumbleweed, which is it's another robotic experiment using wind. I think NASA did a similar thing 30 years ago, and the crew in Austria and Netherlands have done an amazing job trying to recreate that. And this is one I got involved with, and it was a fun one to assemble and to see it in action. I don't know if I have a video of that actually. So at the end of the mission, our team actually got to meet the president of Israel, which I thought was very cool. And I think they really appreciated what the scientific data and everything that we did during the mission, and really appreciated that. So they invited our team to go and meet them at the end, which was a very good opportunity. That's it. So thank you very much. That ends my talk. I'm happy to take any questions or talk more about the mission. I just wanted to thank obviously the photographer Florian, who's responsible for most of these pictures, and for my BME team and Rochelle and Gernot, who contributed to the slides. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepa. It was really lovely. I always love the pictures from the Austrian. I know. It's so clear.
Exactly. I have a little video to play actually, if it will work as well, about the mission. If you have time at the end, I will do that.
We actually have time now. You're a bit ahead.
Oh, shall I? Okay. I'll see if I can share screen to do that then, because I think it would be good for you guys, if you've never seen it, to try and do that. Let me see how I do that. be challenging. I don't still new to IT. Okay, this would be the slide. Let me see if I can share it. I'll just say that. Let me know if can you see this screen, the YouTube screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me see if I can play it. Okay.
You share the sound as well. Oh, yeah. Is there any sound, Deepa?
Well, can you just send the link and we can play it here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deepa, is there any sound that is important that we need to hear?
Oh, you can't hear?
No, we can't.
Oh, let me see if I can share it a different way then.
If it's not relevant, we can just have a look at it.
Oh no, I think it'll be, let me see. I think I've put share sound now, so hopefully it will work, but let me know. Sound now?
Yeah.
MD20 is a Mars analog simulation in the Israeli Negev desert. Researchers from 25 nations gather to emulate the next step in Mars exploration.
I would like to convey my best wishes and congratulations to the AMADE 20 Mars simulation and to its organizers and participants.
All right. Hope you got to see all of that, which it's hard to describe it sometimes. It is nice to see the actual mission itself.
No, it's really, really nice to see this. I don't know if anyone has questions. So, do you want to comment?
First of all, Deepa, thank you for this amazing presentation.
No.
I just had a small question because I can understand this was a logistical nightmare as well to organize in the desert.
Yeah.
I had a little bit more particular question about the spacesuits because in the desert you also have a lot of humidity. So
Yes.
how did you solve the fog problem there?
The humidity problem.
Yes.
Yeah, so the suit itself, so the way, so it has that big square, I don't know if let me see if I can find a picture in the slide of the suit that might be helpful when I'm describing it. So let me see if I can share this. So I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can't.
Is the suit also airtight or?
Yeah, so it is actually, so you can, I don't know if you can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yeah, so this bit in the back has so if you open that up, it has compartments. So it has all the telemetry stuff, but it also has a fan at the back. So you could actually set the fan setting to 60%, 80%, 100%, depending on what the humidity is inside. So we actually had a little percentage of humidity inside the suit itself. So if it got really high, we could increase the fan speed. And actually, that's one of the factors we used to calculate the heat index. It was the temperature and the suit humidity. And if it was, and it is airtight, so the fan would help with some of that. But if it didn't, then we would advise the astronauts come back into the habitat and take the helmet off to try and, or you can open the front visor to try and to help with that humidity issue and the heat issue.
Were there many issues with operating the suit being airtight?
Yeah, I have to say we did. We ran into problems quite early on in the mission with the heat stress index being quite high. I think part of the problem was we started the EVAs around 1 o'clock, and when the temperature was really high and the sun was obviously up, so we then adapted. After a week into the mission, we adapted to starting an earlier EVA time. So we started donning at about 6 a.m., which not everyone was happy with, but which meant we were actually, when we went off EVAs for longer. So initially our EVAs would be like half an hour, and we had to abandon it due to heat stress being just too high and then not being able to carry on. And then when we did earlier start, we went on off to, we even had a 4.5 hour EVA in the end, which we found just starting a bit earlier actually helped with that. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, anyone got a question? Do you want to come up?
That's the problem with microphones.
Hello, thanks so much. I noticed that you all kind of moved locations between different missions, and of course there are some pros and obviously also cons for that. So I'm curious, kind of, have you ever considered doing like a double mission in one location so you don't have to get up and tear down the habitat, or are you always looking to continue to move around, and what benefits have you found?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I think we sort of want to explore new areas with the new sort of terrains and different environments, just so we can get a bit more information rather than doing it in the same area. I think there has been the previous missions, they did consider doing it in the same area, but I think from our point of view, I think it's nice to test it in a different environment just to see if it's not just the area, what else we could do to improve. So I think there's always a keen interest into moving to different areas. Also helps build relationships, I think, with different countries and different agencies. It's always interesting what you can learn from other people and what they have to contribute. So I think it certainly makes it very interesting. It is more challenging, but it makes it more interesting. And I guess from scientific data, it adds an extra layer of the biases in there from being in the same area as well.
Awesome, thank you. Do you know where is next?
Don't know yet. I know there's been some talks with the Egyptian Space Agency, so not sure. Maybe. We're not sure yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any last question for
Hi, thank you so
Hi.
much for the talk, and it was really awesome to see everything that your team got up to. I'm just interested, as the medical officer on the team, were you there in person or were you working?
Yeah.
And
No, I was. Yeah. Sorry.
sorry, go on.
Oh, did you have another question? Sorry.
Sorry, I was just wondering day to day, like what sort of things were you handling? What were you doing?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So I was actually there in person I was actually there for 5 weeks in the end. So my role as the meta for the mission, so when I started, we had the first week where we just prepared for the different things. So we didn't actually start the actual the start date of the mission till the week after. So the initial stages involved me setting up the meta console where we'd have telemetry to make sure that works, setting up all of the first aid kits and all of the do we have enough oxygen? Do we have do we have a defib? So it was a lot of preparation stuff to make sure that was done. And actually that needed a lot of organizing, because we had to liaise with the local hospitals in Israel to try and get some of the equipment, because we weren't allowed to carry medications with us and things. So that part of it initially took a lot of planning. And then when the actual EVA started, my day jobs was, before EVAs, I would do the pre-EVA checklist with the astronauts to make sure the baseline observations were stable and that they were fit to actually go out for the EVAs. And then during the EVAs, it was sitting in front of the the telemetry, monitoring ECGs, monitoring the observations, calculating the heat stress index to make sure they're safe during all times. And actually, we had one session where one of the astronauts developed some arrhythmias, and we had to abandon that. So we needed to do medical checks. And after the EVAs, we would have a meeting with the Innsbruck team and sort of a debrief about how the EVA went, if there's anything we could have done better. Do we not maybe abandon the EVAs? Should we have abandoned it earlier? Could we have carried on longer? Those sort of discussions. And then that's one of the things we identified about earlier EVA starts, when we realized that we're not doing EVAs for longer because we're starting later. And then I actually got involved with being the OSS team as well as the meadow. So when we didn't have EVAs, I got involved with some of the experiments. So like the tumbleweed experiments, I did operating the robots for some of the other experiments. So I got to do some non-medical things as well. And in the evenings, it was mainly every 3 days doing lateral flows and making sure everyone was COVID safe as well during the mission. So I got to do some fun stuff with other experiments actually, as well as being the meadow, which is actually quite nice.
No, that's really cool. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepa. I think this
Thank
is
you.
a good conclusion. I hope you have a lovely workshop.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And,
Thank you. I hope you guys have a good weekend as well. It's a shame I couldn't join you guys, but maybe next time.
big greetings to everyone. Tell them that we won the contest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You probably did, actually.
Great, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
It's lunchtime.
Yeah. I see.